The Night of Betrayal. The Seattle skyline glittered like scattered diamonds against the black velvet of Puget Sound, and from the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Whitmore penthouse, the view was nothing short of spectacular. Natalie Chen stood at those windows, one hand pressed against the cool glass, the other resting protectively over her still flat stomach. The city below pulsed with life, oblivious to the secret joy blooming inside her. She had waited all evening for this moment. Marcus had texted that he'd be home by 8, an unusual promise given his recent obsession with the merger deal. At 28, Natalie had learned to measure her husband's affection in stolen hours and distracted glances. But tonight would be different. Tonight, she would tell him about the baby, and surely that would break through the walls he'd been building between them. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 11 when Marcus finally swept through the door. His charcoal suit was impeccable, his dark hair barely disturbed despite the late hour. But his eyes, those green eyes that had once looked at her with warmth, were cold and calculating. "You're still awake," he said, not quite a question, not quite an observation. He loosened his silk tie without looking at her. "I needed to talk to you. Marcus, I have something wonderful to tell you." He poured himself whiskey from the crystal decanter, the amber liquid catching the light. "Make it quick. I have an early morning conference call with Victoria." Victoria Kane. The name landed between them like a stone. Marcus's business partner, the razor-sharp strategist who'd engineered their company's meteoric rise. Natalie had met her exactly twice, both times feeling invisible under the other woman's appraising stare. "Marcus, I'm pregnant." The words tumbled out in a rush. "We're going to have a baby." The silence that followed was suffocating. Marcus set down his glass with deliberate precision. When he turned to face her, his expression held no joy, no surprise, no warmth, only cold calculation. "You're pregnant," he repeated flatly. "Now, of all times." "I thought you'd be happy," Natalie whispered, her excitement curdling into dread. "Happy?" Marcus laughed, a harsh sound that held no humor. "Natalie, do you have any idea what's happening right now? The Kane-Whitmore merger is 48 hours from closing, 48 hours from making us the dominant force in cloud computing. And you choose now to tell me you're pregnant? Our baby isn't about timing, Marcus. It's about us, about our family." "There is no us," he cut her off brutally. "There's my company, my future, my legacy. You were supposed to be a pleasant accessory to that. Instead, you've become a complication." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Natalie's feet. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Victoria and I have built something extraordinary. She understands ambition. She speaks my language. You?" He looked at her with something close to contempt. "You were a nice distraction, Natalie, a pretty face who knew which fork to use at charity dinners. But I need a partner, not a dependent." "I'm your wife," she said, her voice breaking, "and I'm carrying your child." "A mistake I intend to correct." Marcus walked to his study and returned with a folder. "Sign these. Divorce papers. You'll get $50,000 and disappear quietly. No custody claims, no press conferences, no drama." "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious." His voice dropped to something dangerous. "Sign them, or I'll have you removed with nothing. The prenup you signed gives you 0 rights to my assets. I'm being generous with the $50,000. This is our baby, Marcus. That's your problem to solve." He pulled out his phone, pressed a single button. "Send them up." 2 security guards appeared within seconds, large men in black suits whom Natalie had seen countless times protecting the building. Now they were here for her. "Escort Mrs. Chen out of the building," Marcus ordered. "She's no longer a resident." "Marcus, please!" Natalie reached for him, but he stepped back as though her touch would contaminate him. "Take only what you're wearing. Everything else stays. It all belongs to me anyway." The guards moved toward her. Natalie backed away, disbelief morphing into real fear. "I can't throw me out. I live here. This is my home." "This was never your home," Marcus said coldly. "It was mine. And now, you're trespassing." The guards weren't rough, but they were firm. They guided her toward the elevator while she pleaded, cried, begged Marcus to reconsider. But he had already turned his back, phone pressed to his ear, discussing tomorrow's meetings with Victoria, as though Natalie had already ceased to exist. The elevator descended 40 floors in seconds that felt like hours. The lobby doorman, Gerald, who had always greeted her warmly, couldn't meet his eyes. Then the glass doors swung open, and she was pushed, gently but firmly, outside. Into the storm. The Seattle rain hit her like a physical assault, cold and merciless. Within seconds, her silk blouse was plastered to her skin, her carefully styled hair hanging in wet ropes. She had no coat, no purse, no phone, no money. Just the clothes on her back and the life growing inside her. Natalie stood on the sidewalk, shaking from cold and shock, watching the lit windows of the penthouse 40 floors above. Through the rain, she could see Marcus's silhouette moving about, already forgetting her. She sank onto a bus stop bench, wrapping her arms around herself. The city that had once been her playground now felt hostile and alien. Tears mixed with rain on her face as the full horror of her situation crashed over her. Homeless, pregnant, abandoned. A woman hurrying past pressed something in her hand, a $5 bill, mistaking her for a beggar. She stared at it, then at her left hand where her wedding ring still gleamed mockingly. She would survive this night. She had to for the baby. But as she sat there in the rain, watching her old life shine impossibly far above her, Natalie Chen made herself a promise. She would never be this powerless again. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that folded in the pocket of her soaked pants was a letter that had arrived that morning. A letter from a law firm she'd never heard of, asking her to contact them about a matter of utmost importance regarding the estate of Edmund Jaw. A letter that would change everything.
The coffee shop was called Sunrise Corner, a modest place on Pike Street where the barista didn't ask questions when Natalie spent 3 hours nursing a single cup of tea. It had been 4 days since that terrible night, and she'd learned to navigate the city's invisible network of warmth and temporary refuge. The women's shelter on Capitol Hill had given her a bed, clean clothes, and most importantly, prenatal vitamins. But the real lifeline came from the crumpled letter she'd discovered in her pocket. Theodore Ashford and Associates. The address was in downtown Seattle, not far from where she now sat, trying to gather the courage to call the number printed in elegant script at the bottom of the page. What if it was a scam? What if it was Marcus, playing some cruel game? But desperation has a way of making risks seem worthwhile. At 10 o'clock exactly, Natalie stood before a distinguished brick building that housed the law firm. The receptionist, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, seemed to be expecting her. "Miss Chen, Mr. Ashford has been hoping to hear from you. Please, follow me." Theodore Ashford's office was a sanctuary of old-world elegance, walnut bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes, Persian rugs softening footsteps, and photographs spanning decades showing the same silver-haired man with various dignitaries. Ashford himself rose from behind a massive oak desk, his eyes crinkling with what appeared to be genuine relief. "Miss Chen, Natalie, thank God." He gestured to a comfortable chair. "I've been trying to reach you for 6 months. When my letters went unanswered, I feared the worst." "I never saw any letters," Natalie said quietly. "My husband, ex-husband, he handled all our mail." Something flickered in Ashford's eyes. Understanding, perhaps, or pity. "I see. Well, you're here now, and that's what matters. Natalie, what I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I assure you every word is documented and verified." He opened a thick manila folder, spreading photographs and documents across the desk. Natalie found herself staring at a picture of an elderly Chinese man with penetrating dark eyes and a slight smile. Something about his face seemed familiar, though she couldn't place why. "This is Edmund Zhao," Ashford said gently, "your maternal grandfather." "That's impossible. My mother was an orphan. She told me so." "Your mother believed she was an orphan," Ashford corrected. "The truth is far more complicated. Your grandmother, Catherine, was Zhao's daughter from his first marriage. When she eloped with a man Zhao disapproved of, your grandfather on your mother's side, Zhao cut her off completely. It was a decision he regretted every day for the rest of his life." Natalie's hands trembled as she touched the photograph. "I don't understand. If he regretted it, why didn't he reach out?" "Pride, stubbornness, the same traits that made him a business legend made him a difficult man to love. By the time he tried to make amends, your grandmother had passed away and your mother had married your father. They died in that ferry accident when you were 6, and you disappeared into the foster system. Zhao spent 20 years and millions of dollars trying to find you." The room seemed to tilt. Natalie gripped the arms of her chair. Did he find me?" Ashford's expression grew somber. "He passed away 8 months ago, but before he died, he gave me explicit instructions. If you were found, when you were found, you were to inherit everything, his entire estate, with no conditions, no strings attached. He said it was the only way he could apologize for the pain his pride had caused." "Everything?" The word felt meaningless. "Mr. Ashford, I don't even know who Edmund Zhao was." The elderly lawyer smiled. "Perhaps it's better if I show you." He turned his laptop screen toward her and pulled up a series of financial documents. Natalie found herself staring at a picture of an elderly Chinese man with penetrating dark eyes and a slight smile. Edmund Zhao started with a single cargo ship in 1965. By the time of his death, he controlled Zhao Global Holdings, one of the world's largest privately held shipping and logistics companies. He owned port facilities on 4 continents, a fleet of over 300 vessels, and had diversified into warehousing, real estate, and emerging technologies. Numbers scrolled across the screen, numbers so large they seemed abstract, unreal. "The estate has been in trust, managed by a board of directors who report to this firm. But as the sole heir, you now have controlling interest in all assets. Natalie, your grandfather's net worth at the time of his death was approximately $120 billion. The words didn't compute. Natalie heard them, but they couldn't possibly apply to her. She was 4 days removed from sleeping in a shelter, from counting quarters for bus fare. That's not possible." "It's not only possible, it's documented." Ashford slid a thick portfolio across the desk. "Properties in Singapore, Hong Kong, London, and Vancouver. Investment portfolios spanning every major market. The Zhao estate in Singapore alone is worth $2 billion, and it's all yours." Natalie's vision blurred. She thought of Marcus, so proud of his $30 million company, sneering at her as though she were worthless. She thought of the $50,000 he'd offered as though it was generous. The cosmic irony was so profound, it felt like a fever dream. "I need you to understand something," Ashford said, his voice growing serious. "This wealth comes with complexity. You'll have enemies, people who've been waiting for Edmund to die so they could challenge his empire. You'll need protection, education, strategy. I'm offering to help you, but the question is, what do you want to do with this inheritance?" Natalie's hand moved instinctively to her stomach, to the small life growing there. What did she want? A week ago, she had wanted nothing more than Marcus's love and a happy family. But that woman, that naive, dependent woman, was gone, burned away in the rain. "I want to learn," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I want to understand every aspect of my grandfather's empire. I want to become someone who can protect herself and her child, and I want to do it without anyone knowing who I am. Not yet. Ashford nodded slowly, respect dawning in his eyes. That's wise. We can arrange that. Edmund Zhao's estate in Singapore is very private, very secure. You could live there, study there, and the world would never know the heir to Zhao Global Holdings had been found. How long would I need? To truly master this, to understand global shipping, logistics, finance, and corporate strategy, Ashford considered. 5 years minimum. With the right teachers working intensively, you could emerge as formidable as your grandfather. 5 years. It seemed like an eternity and an instant all at once. There's one more thing, Natalie said quietly. Marcus Whitmore and Victoria Kane, I want intelligence on their company, regular reports, but they can never know I'm watching. Consider it done, Ashford smiled. Your grandfather would have approved. He always said, the best revenge is patience and preparation. 2 weeks later, Natalie stood on the terrace of the Zhao estate in Singapore, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. The estate was magnificent, a modernist masterpiece of glass and stone, nestled in lush tropical gardens, guarded by walls and sophisticated security that made her feel safe for the first time in months. She had been introduced to her team, Director Huang, a former professor from London School of Economics who would teach her finance. Grace Morrison, a corporate attorney who had negotiated deals on 5 continents. James Wu, a former intelligence analyst who would give her the tools to understand her enemies. And Dr. Patel, the obstetrician who would guide her through her pregnancy. The work was brutal. 18-hour days studying shipping manifests, market analyses, corporate structures. She learned to read a balance sheet the way Marcus read code, fluently, seeing patterns invisible to others. She studied hostile takeovers, leveraged buyouts, the intricate dance of international trade law. And 5 months into her exile, on a warm Singapore night, with monsoon rains drumming against the windows, she gave birth to a perfect baby girl. Natalie held her daughter, marveling at tiny fingers and dark eyes that seemed to hold infinite wisdom. Melody, she whispered. Your name is Melody Chin Zhao. Melody became her anchor and her purpose. Every lesson Natalie learned, every skill she mastered was for this small person who depended completely on her. She would build a world where Melody would never know fear, never know powerlessness. The years passed in a blur of intense education and quiet transformation. Director Huang taught her to think in systems, to see how moving one piece could cascade across an entire empire. Grace Morrison showed her the weapons hidden in contracts and corporate bylaws. James Wu's intelligence reports kept her informed of everything happening in Seattle. Marcus and Victoria's rising prominence, their expanding company,
The Queen returns. The Pacific Tech Summit was held at Seattle's most prestigious venue, the Emerald Hall, a glittering palace of glass and steel overlooking Elliott Bay. The who's who of the technology world had descended upon the city, billionaires, innovators, and power brokers all vying for attention and deals worth fortunes. Marcus Whitmore stood at the center of it all, resplendent in a custom Italian suit, Victoria Kane at his side in a crimson dress that cost more than most people's cars. Their company, Kane Whitmore Technologies, had become a juggernaut, valued at $3 billion. They were the golden couple of the tech world, their faces on magazine covers, their opinions sought by journalists and analysts. This is our moment, Victoria murmured to Marcus as they surveyed the crowd. Senator Bradshaw is interested in our government contracts proposal, and the venture capital firms are circling. We're about to become untouchable. Marcus smiled, that cold, calculated smile that had become his trademark. 5 years ago, he'd made the difficult but necessary decision to cut loose dead weight. Natalie had been sweet, but ultimately useless, a distraction from greatness. He'd never looked back, never wondered what happened to her. Why would he? She was irrelevant. The murmur in the crowd shifted. Heads turned toward the entrance. A woman had arrived. She wore a midnight blue dress that was elegant without being ostentatious, her dark hair swept up in a sophisticated style. But it wasn't her appearance that commanded attention, it was the aura of quiet, absolute power that surrounded her like an invisible force field. 2 bodyguards flanked her, professional and alert. Behind her walked Theodore Ashford, whose reputation as the attorney for old money was legendary. "Who is that?" Victoria hissed, her competitive instincts immediately activated. Marcus pulled out his phone, checking the guest list. N. Zhao, CEO of Zhao Global Holdings. I've never heard of them. Zhao Global? You've never heard of Zhao Global? They're one of the largest private shipping and logistics companies on the planet. Completely secretive. The old man who founded it died a few years ago, but no one knew who inherited. I guess this is her. The woman, En Zhao, moved through the crowd with perfect grace, stopping to speak with CEOs and ministers, each conversation brief, but leaving the other party looking impressed or slightly unsettled. She was making her way, Marcus realized, directly toward them. When she finally stood before them, Marcus got his first clear look at her face. Time stopped. It couldn't be. It was impossible. Natalie. The name fell from his lips in a strangled whisper. She smiled, and it was nothing like the gentle, uncertain smiles he remembered. This smile was polished steel. "Hello, Marcus, Victoria. It's been a long time." Her voice was cultured, confident, completely transformed. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Natalie, Marcus's... You mean the wife who..." "The wife you replaced," Natalie finished smoothly. "Yes, that would be me. Though I go by En Zhao professionally now. Natalie Chen Zhao, to be precise." Marcus's mind raced, trying to reconcile the broken, crying woman he'd thrown out with this creature of power standing before him. "What? How am I here?" Natalie's smile widened fractionally. "It's an interesting story. You see, when you had me removed from our home 5 years ago, I discovered something fascinating. My grandfather, Edmund Zhao, had been searching for me for decades. He died shortly before we met, but he left me everything. His entire empire. $120 billion, give or take." The color drained from Marcus's face. Victoria's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Around them, the crowd had gone silent, sensing drama. That's not possible," Marcus managed. "Oh, it's very possible," Natalie said pleasantly. "I've spent 5 years learning everything about the empire I inherited. Shipping, logistics, real estate, technology investments. My companies move 40% of consumer goods through Asian ports. I own the buildings that house data centers for half the cloud computing companies in the world, including, as it happens, 17 of your major infrastructure providers." Understanding dawned on Marcus's face. Understanding and horror. "I've been buying up your supply chain," Natalie continued, her voice never losing its pleasant tone, "quietly through shell companies over the past 2 years. The servers you lease? I own the company. The fiber optic cables you depend on? Mine. The logistics that move your hardware? Also mine. You've built your empire on land that belongs to me. I just never bothered to tell you until now." "This is insane," Victoria snapped, recovering her composure. "What do you want? Money? Is this some kind of shakedown?" Natalie turned her gaze to Victoria, and the other woman actually flinched. I don't need money, Victoria. I have more money than you can comprehend. What I wanted was to see the look on Marcus's face when he realized that the complication he threw away is now the person who controls his company's fate. She paused, letting that sink in. Every contract you have with my subsidiaries comes up for renewal in the next 90 days. I could choose not to renew them. Your company would collapse within 6 months. Or I could triple your rates. Or, Marcus's voice was barely audible. Or, I could be generous, Natalie said softly. I could let everything continue as is, because unlike you, Marcus, I don't need to destroy people to feel powerful. I already am powerful. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a photograph, holding it so only Marcus could see. It showed a beautiful 5-year-old girl with dark eyes, laughing in a garden. Your daughter, Natalie said quietly. Melody. She's brilliant, happy, and loved. Everything you threw away because you were too blind to see what actually mattered. I'm not here for revenge, Marcus. I'm here to show you what you lost, and to ensure you never forget it. She turned to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Marcus, the next time you think about discarding someone because they don't fit your vision of success, remember this moment. Remember that the woman you threw into the rain came back as the storm itself. Natalie walked away, Ashford and her security detail falling into step beside her. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. Marcus stood frozen, Victoria beside him, both of them diminished in a way that had nothing to do with money or power. Around them, whispers spread like wildfire. The story of the rejected wife who returned as a titan would be legend by morning. Outside, Natalie climbed into her car, allowing herself one moment of satisfaction before her mask slipped. She pulled out her phone and looked at a recent photo of Melody, her beautiful daughter, who knew nothing of this night, who was safe at their Singapore home with her nanny. Did it feel good? Ashford asked gently. It felt necessary, Natalie replied. But it's done now. I've proven what I needed to prove. To myself more than to him. What now? Natalie smiled, genuine this time. Now I go home to my daughter. I have an empire to run, a foundation to expand, and a life to live. Marcus is the past. Everything else is the future. As the car pulled away from the Emerald Hall, Natalie looked back one last time at the glittering building. Somewhere in there, Marcus Whitmore was confronting the magnitude of his mistake. But that was his burden to carry, not hers. She had been broken, rebuilt, and reborn. The discarded wife had become a queen, and queens don't look back. The end.